Morning, good evening, good afternoon. Today, a column of army trucks, tankers, were seen driving up and down in the Harare city center. The last 3 weeks have been tense. Ever since blessed Deja and his colleagues gave their press conference in which they openly called for Mnangagwa to resign, everybody has been tense. This was just a rerun of what happened in 2017 when the army staged the military coup. And what is worrying for the nation is, are we seeing the same thing happening again? History has got a habit of repeating itself. I think the answer to that is yes. Because when the relevant authority were asked what is the column of tanks doing in the city, they failed to give a rational answer to it. Here is the video of the column of tanks. The matter is, no one is really surprised about this turn of events. This is just a rerun of 2017. Let me say for the record that there is no such thing as a military coup is constitutional. What happened in 2017 when Chiwenga and company staged their military coup? They called it a military assisted transition. There is no such thing as a military assisted transition. The mandate of every government in a healthy and functioning democracy comes from the people in a free, fair, and credible election. The idea that somehow if the army sees that things are not going on well, they can step in and put things right, is nonsense. There is no such clause in the Constitution. The Constitution is very specific. The state president is the commander-in-chief of the armed services, the army. And only he can deploy the army. What happened on the 15th of November 2017 was that the army deployed itself. And to underline that point, deployed itself to hold the commander-in-chief to ransom. How anyone can say that was constitutional, legal, and justified beggars belief. And yet, that is exactly what High Court Judge George Weshe said. He judged in his judgment that the coup was justified, legal, and constitutional. If you're going to say it's constitutional, then you've got to quote the chapter and verse of the Constitution that says, yes, you can do that. There is no such chapter and verse. So there are some people who think the 2017 set a dangerous precedent. I do agree with that. The judgment by George Weshe did set a very dangerous precedent. But let's be clear. If a judge was to say murder is legal, he may set a bad precedent because everyone else who commits murder would think, well, it's now legal. We've got this precedent. But the truth of the matter is, there is no section of the Constitution, there's no constitutional basis for that judgment. Indeed, the Constitution itself contradicts that. So the judgment is completely wrong. And we know why. He had to sanitize the military coup on behalf of those in positions of power and authority. This is nothing new. Zimbabwe's legal system, the judiciary, has always played to the hands of those in positions of power and authority. So we should not pretend this was something unusual. We all know that ZANU-PF has always bribed, corrupted all the key players in the country's public and private institutions to further its own selfish political ends. In 2023, just a few weeks before nomination day, all the judges in Zimbabwe received US $400,000. Mnangagwa called it a housing allowance. None of those judges had asked for a housing allowance. And none of those, sorry, he called it a housing loan. And none of those have repaid it. And it wasn't only the judges who were bribed run up to those elections. The bribe started actually in November 2022 when all the MPs and senators were given 40,000 US dollars housing loans. Many of them knew that with the elections coming, there's a fair chance that they will not win and get back their Grevenland seat. And so any hope of repaying that loan was completely out of the question. And yet they all received the loan. Deputy ministers received 230,000 US dollars housing loan. Ministers, $500,000 US dollars housing loan. This went on. The reason why the MPs and senators received their payoff early is because Mnangagwa knew that he didn't want them to raise the dust. And how could they? They have just received their share of the bribe. Their silence has been bought, and so they never raised the issue. The tragedy for Zimbabwe is we are now 45 years after independence, and yet here we are. We are still failing to hold free, fair, and credible elections. This military coup makes sense. If you can't remove the incumbent through the ballot, you've got to remove him using violence. How else can you remove him? The 2017 military coup appealed to most Zimbabweans right across the board for the simple reason that the nation had been stuck with Mugabe for 37 years. Ironically, the same army, the same war veterans, the same Mnangagwa had been instrumental in keeping Mugabe in power throughout those years. And so it was laughable that they wanted to pretend that they are staging the coup in the interest of upholding the constitution. Here was the picture of then the army commander Chiwenga waving the Zimbabwe constitution. Yes, even he could not say which part of the constitution allowed him to carry out the coup. I think the reason why we have got to hold our heads in shame is that the military coup has not helped resolve Zimbabwe's political and economic crisis. It's only dragged us deeper and deeper into the abyss. Right now, the individuals who are behind the present call for Mnangagwa to go they've made it very clear they want him to be replaced by VP Chiwenga. The people of Zimbabwe, ordinary people of Zimbabwe, have not had any say in that. As I said at the beginning, Mnangagwa rigged the 2023 elections. And as a ZANU-PF candidate in those elections, Chiwenga played his part. And so did all these war veterans. And trust me, now that Mnangagwa has dropped his idea of trying to stay in power until 2030, if VP Chiwenga is the ZANU-PF candidate for 2028, we can all be certain that Deja and company will play their part in rigging those elections to make sure that Chiwenga gets into power. Our problem is the failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections. Our problem is to allow the war veterans, and when I say war veterans, I'm not talking only of those who were demobilized in the early 80s or who have since retired from various other occupations they took up after independence. I'm also talking of those who are still in the army, the police, the CIO, prison services, in government, parastatals, you name it, who have all played their role in imposing the de facto one-party state, ZANU-PF, that has ruled the country with an iron fist. We are stuck with them. We have failed to make it abundantly clear to all of them that the system has failed and we must change it. And we must say it now. The idea that we can go through another coup only to replace one dictator with another is an outrage. And yet, this may well be where we're going. We have failed ourselves. 45 years in this day and age, and we still fail to come up with a political system that is stable, that allows everyone to have a meaningful say in the governance of the country, is the root cause why we are where we are. Some of the voices in the background today, they were praising, seeing it as a way of ending the nightmare. I don't see it that way. We have got to end this cycle of military coup, a select few having the veto on who rules the country. We owe it to ourselves. We should be honest enough and courageous enough to say the present political system has failed the nation, and we demand change. And the change we want is that we want the democratic reforms implemented so that future elections are decided by the people of Zimbabwe in a free, fair, and credible electoral process. This is the only way we can guarantee a stable government that is accountable to Thank you very much. Have a good day.